The sky above Geneva shimmered with an unnatural brilliance as the alien vessel descended, its sleek, obsidian hull reflecting the sunlight in fractured rainbows. The ship was enormous, dwarfing even the largest human-made structures, and its silent approach sent ripples of awe and unease through the gathered crowds. Dr. Elena Marquez adjusted her glasses, her sharp brown eyes scanning the vessel's surface for any discernible features. As the lead scientist of Earth's newly formed First Contact Committee, she had spent the last 6 months preparing for this moment. Yet, standing here now, she felt woefully unprepared. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made her chest tighten and her palms sweat. She glanced at her colleague, General Marcus Hale, whose stoic expression betrayed nothing. His military uniform was immaculate, his posture rigid, but Elena noticed the slight twitch in his jaw, a telltale sign of his own apprehension. The ship came to a halt, hovering just above the ground, and a low hum resonated through the air, vibrating in Elena's bones. A panel on the vessel's side slid open, revealing a ramp that extended to the ground. From the shadows emerged 3 figures, their forms humanoid but distinctly alien. Their skin was a pale, iridescent silver, and their elongated limbs moved with a fluid grace that was almost hypnotic. They wore robes that seemed to shift colors as they walked, and their faces were devoid of any discernible features save for 2 large, almond-shaped eyes that glowed faintly. Elena took a deep breath, steadying herself, and stepped forward, General Hale at her side. "Welcome to Earth," she said, her voice steady despite the knot in her stomach. "I am Dr. Elena Marquez, and this is General Marcus Hale. We represent the people of Earth." The lead alien tilted its head, its glowing eyes studying her with an intensity that made her feel like a specimen under a microscope. When it spoke, its voice was melodic yet cold, echoing in her mind rather than her ears. "We are the envoys of the Galactic Council. We come with an offer of protection." Elena exchanged a glance with Hale, who gave a barely perceptible nod. "Protection?" she repeated, her curiosity piqued. "From what?" The envoy's gaze shifted, scanning the horizon as if the answer were written in the sky. "There are forces in the universe that you cannot yet comprehend. Forces that would see your world reduced to ash. The Galactic Council has deemed your species worthy of safeguarding, for now." The words hung in the air, heavy and ominous. Elena's mind raced, trying to parse the implications. "With all due respect," she said carefully, "we would need more information before we can accept such an offer. What exactly are these forces? And what would this protection entail?" The envoy's expression, if it could be called that, remained inscrutable. "Your questions are expected, yet premature. You lack the context to understand the nature of the threat. Suffice it to say, our protection is not optional. It is a necessity." Hale stepped forward, his voice firm. "With all due respect, we don't take kindly to ultimatums. If you expect us to hand over our sovereignty without explanation, you're sorely mistaken." The envoy's gaze shifted to Hale, and for a moment, Elena thought she saw a flicker of something. Amusement? Annoyance? It was impossible to tell. "Your defiance is noted," it said, "but it is irrelevant. The Council's decision is final. You have 1 lunar cycle to prepare." With that, the envoys turned and began to ascend the ramp, their robes shimmering like liquid metal. Elena's heart pounded in her chest. "Wait!" she called out, desperation creeping into her voice. "You can't just leave us with more questions than answers. We deserve to know what we're up against." The lead envoy paused, glancing over its shoulder. "You will see soon enough," it said, its tone final. The ramp retracted, and the ship began to rise, leaving Elena and Hale standing in stunned silence. As the vessel disappeared into the sky, the crowd erupted into a cacophony of voices. Fear, anger, confusion. Elena turned to Hale, her mind racing. "We need to convene the committee," she said, "and we need to find out what the hell they're not telling us." Hale nodded, his expression grim. "Agreed, but we're going to need more than just diplomacy. If they're not willing to talk, we'll have to find another way to get answers." Back at the committee headquarters, the atmosphere was tense. Representatives from every nation sat around the table, their faces a mix of anxiety and determination. Elena stood at the head of the room, projecting the data they had gathered so far onto a large screen. "We have 1 month," she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs. 1 month to prepare for whatever this protection entails. But we can't do that without knowing what we're up against. A representative from China raised his hand. "Do we have any leads? Any clues as to what this threat might be?" Elena hesitated. "Not yet, but we're working on it. Our scientists are analyzing every scrap of data from the Envoy's ship, and our intelligence networks are scouring for any information that might shed light on this." Hale leaned forward, his hands clasped on the table. "We also need to consider the possibility that this protection is a ruse. What if the real threat is the Galactic Council itself?" The room fell silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Elena nodded slowly. "It's a possibility we can't ignore. But until we have more information, we need to focus on what we can control. We need to prepare for every scenario." As the meeting continued, Elena's thoughts drifted back to the Envoy's cryptic words. "You will see soon enough." The phrase echoed in her mind, a haunting reminder of the uncertainty they faced. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being manipulated, that there was more to this than met the eye. But for now, all they could do was wait, and hope that they would be ready when the time came. The section ends with Elena staring out the window at the night sky, the stars twinkling like distant, unreadable eyes. Somewhere out there, the answers waited, and she was determined to find them. The days following the Envoy's departure were a whirlwind of activity. Elena spent every waking moment poring over data, coordinating with scientists, and attending endless meetings. The tension was palpable, a constant undercurrent that gnawed at her resolve. Despite their best efforts, they had uncovered little about the nature of the threat the Envoys had alluded to. The Galactic Council's cryptic warnings loomed over them like a storm cloud, dark and impenetrable. It was on the 7th day that everything changed. Elena was in her office, reviewing a report on the Envoy's ship's energy signatures, when her assistant burst in, his face pale and eyes wide. "Dr. Marquez, you need to see this," he said, his voice trembling. "There's been an attack." Her heart skipped a beat. "Where?" "Mars. Colony Alpha." The words hit her like a punch to the gut. Colony Alpha was one of humanity's most advanced settlements, a testament to their ingenuity and determination. If it had been attacked, she didn't want to think about the implications. Grabbing her tablet, she rushed to the command center, where General Hale was already barking orders. The room was a hive of activity, screens displaying live feeds from Mars. The images were chaotic. Flames engulfing structures, people running in panic, and something else, something that made Elena's blood run cold. Amid the chaos, she caught glimpses of shadowy figures, their forms shifting and indistinct, as if they were made of smoke and darkness. They moved with unnatural speed, cutting through the colonists like a scythe through wheat. "What the hell are those things?" Hale growled, his eyes fixed on the screen. "I don't know," Elena replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "But they're not from here." As they watched, the feed from Colony Alpha abruptly cut out, leaving the room in stunned silence. Hale slammed his fist on the table. "Get me a status report. Now!" Elena's mind raced. This was the threat the Envoys had warned them about. But why had they attacked Mars? And why now? She turned to Hale. "We need to send a team. We need to see this firsthand." He nodded, his expression grim. "Agreed. But we're not going in blind. We'll send a recon team first. If those things are still there, we need to know what we're dealing with." The recon mission was assembled quickly, a small team of elite soldiers and scientists equipped with the latest technology. Elena insisted on going, despite Hale's protests. "This is my area of expertise," she argued. "If there's anything to learn from this, I need to be there." Reluctantly, he agreed. As they boarded the shuttle, Elena felt a mix of fear and determination. This was it, their first real encounter with the unknown. The flight to Mars was tense, the crew silent as they prepared for what lay ahead. When they arrived, The scene was even worse than the feeds had shown. Colony Alpha was in ruins, the once thriving settlement reduced to smoldering rubble. The air was thick with smoke, and the ground was littered with debris. But what struck Elena most was the silence. There were no cries for help, no sounds of life. Just an eerie, oppressive quiet. The team moved cautiously, their weapons at the ready. Elena's heart pounded in her chest as they approached the center of the colony. Suddenly, one of the soldiers signaled for them to stop. "Movement," he whispered, pointing ahead. Elena squinted, trying to make out the shapes in the haze. Then she saw them, the shadowy figures from the feed. They were unlike anything she had ever seen, their forms shifting and writhing as if they were made of liquid darkness. They moved with a predatory grace, their glowing eyes piercing through the smoke. "Hold your fire," Hale ordered, his voice low. "We need to observe." But before they could react, one of the creatures turned, its eyes locking onto them. In an instant, it lunged, moving faster than Elena thought possible. The soldiers opened fire, but their bullets seemed to pass right through the creature, as if it were made of smoke. "Fall back," Hale shouted, grabbing Elena's arm and pulling her away. They retreated to the shuttle, the creatures close behind. As they boarded, Elena caught one last glimpse of the creatures, their glowing eyes burning into her memory. Back on Earth, the mood was somber. The recon team had barely escaped with their lives, and the footage they had captured was chilling. Elena sat in the command center, replaying the encounter in her mind. The creatures were unlike anything they had ever encountered. Unstoppable, incomprehensible. And yet, there was something familiar about them, something that nagged at the edges of her consciousness. As she reviewed the data, a notification popped up on her screen. It was from Dr. Raj Patel, one of the leading experts in xenobiology. "Dr. Marquez, you need to see this," the message read. "I think I've found something." Elena hurried to Patel's lab, where he was hunched over a microscope. "What is it?" she asked, her voice tinged with urgency. He looked up, his expression a mix of excitement and apprehension. "I've been analyzing the samples we collected from Mars. There's something unusual about them. The genetic material doesn't match anything in our database. But there are traces of human DNA." Elena's eyes widened. "Human DNA? How is that possible?" Patel shook his head. "I don't know, but it's as if these creatures are somehow connected to us. It's like they're part of us." The implications were staggering. If the creatures were somehow tied to humanity, it changed everything. But how? And why? Elena's mind raced, trying to piece together the puzzle. "We need to dig deeper," she said. "If there's a connection, we need to find it." As she left the lab, her thoughts were a whirlwind of questions. What were these creatures? Where had they come from? And what did they want? The answers were out there, hidden in the shadows, and she was determined to find them. The section ends with Elena standing on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the truth waited, and she would stop at nothing to uncover it. The discovery of human DNA within the creature's genetic makeup sent shockwaves through the scientific community. Elena spent the next several days immersed in research, her office cluttered with stacks of reports, holographic projections, and hastily scribbled notes. The connection between humanity and these shadowy entities was undeniable, but the implications were staggering. What did it mean? Were these creatures a twisted reflection of humanity, a dark mirror held up by some unknown force? Or was there something more sinister at play? General Hale's patience was wearing thin. "We need answers, Elena," he said during one of their late-night meetings. His voice was low, but the urgency in his tone was unmistakable. "Every second we spend theorizing is a second we're not preparing for the next attack." Elena rubbed her temples, exhaustion weighing heavily on her. "I know, Marcus, but we can't just rush into this. If we're going to fight these things, we need to understand them. And right now, all we have are questions." Hale leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. "Then let's start answering them. What's our next move?" Elena hesitated, then pulled up a holographic map of the solar system. "We need to go back to Mars. There's something there, something we missed. If these creatures are tied to us, there has to be a reason they attacked Colony Alpha. We need to find out what it is. Hale nodded, his jaw set. All right, but this time we're going in prepared. No more recon missions. We're taking a full team, and we're not coming back empty-handed. The mission to Mars was launched within days. This time, the team was larger and better equipped, with a mix of soldiers, scientists, and engineers. Elena insisted on leading the scientific contingent, despite Hale's protests. This is my area of expertise, she said firmly. If there's anything to find, I need to be there. The journey to Mars was tense, the crew on edge as they approached the red planet. When they landed, the scene was eerily similar to their previous visit. Smoldering ruins, oppressive silence, and the lingering sense of dread. But this time they were ready. The team moved cautiously, their weapons at the ready. Elena's heart pounded as they approached the center of the colony, where the creatures had first appeared. The air was thick with tension, every shadow a potential threat. But as they reached the heart of the settlement, they found something unexpected. A massive, ancient structure buried beneath the rubble. What the hell is that? Hale muttered, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed the structure. It was unlike anything they had ever seen, its surface covered in intricate carvings that seemed to shift and change as the light hit them. Elena's breath caught in her throat. This isn't human, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. It's alien, but it's old, really old. The team set to work, carefully excavating the structure and documenting their findings. As they dug deeper, they uncovered more carvings, each more complex than the last. Elena's mind raced as she studied them, trying to decipher their meaning. There were symbols that resembled human figures, but they were distorted, twisted into grotesque shapes. And there were other symbols, strange, angular designs that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. As the hours passed, Elena began to piece together a narrative. The carvings told a story of an ancient civilization that had once thrived on Mars, long before humanity had even existed. This civilization had been advanced, their technology far beyond anything humanity had achieved. But they had also been arrogant, their hubris leading them to tamper with forces they could not control. And in their arrogance, they had created something that had destroyed them. Elena's hands trembled as she traced the carvings. They created them, she said, her voice hollow. These creatures, they're not natural. They're a weapon that turned on its creators. Hale's expression darkened. You're saying these things were made by Martians? Elena nodded. Yes, and if they're tied to us, it's because we're following the same path. We're making the same mistakes. The realization hit her like a ton of bricks. The Galactic Council's offer of protection wasn't just about safeguarding humanity. It was about preventing them from repeating the mistakes of the past. But the Council's methods were flawed, their secrecy and condescension only fueling humanity's defiance. If they were going to survive, they needed to find another way. As the team continued their work, Elena's mind raced. They needed to understand the creatures to find a way to stop them. But they also needed to confront the Galactic Council to demand the truth. The answers were out there, hidden in the shadows, and she was determined to find them. The section ends with Elena standing before the ancient structure, her resolve hardening. The past held the key to their future, and she would stop at nothing to unlock it.